range, like the pictures coming out of the back of my head. We're live. Should we wait a second to let people join? Probably.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody.
But if you're there, I'm Will Huntsberry. This is Laura Cohn. Just wait 1 second while we wait for a couple more people to join, and then we will jump right in.
Yeah. Give them one more minute.
Yeah, we'll give them 1 more minute. I'm sure they're all dropping whatever they're doing so they can log on to this presentation right now.
Absolutely. Hopefully somebody out there is chopping onions and garlic or doing some dinner prep while we're talking.
I hope so. That would be very NPR of us, right? Give it another 30 seconds or so to let people log on. I know if it were me, I'd probably be having some technical challenges.
That's why we tricked you into coming early, Will.
Always a smart move. My friends all know to do that. All right, should we hit it?
Let's do it.
Well, for those of you who have already logged on, welcome. We're so happy you're here. My name is Will Huntsberry. I'm a reporter with Voice of San Diego. I cover a ton of education. With me is Laura Cohn, who has helped us make this guide for, is it 4 years now? How many?
4 years?
4
yeah,
years.
this is the 4th edition.
Yeah, I think we might be getting good at it. So tonight we're going to talk to you about the guide. We're going to talk you through the guide. And for those of you who are here, and you can post in the chat, we would love it if you post in there your name if you want to, or if you don't, that's fine, or what age your kids are and what area you live in. That's what we're really interested in. That'll let us help get you better information, hopefully. And before we jump into the parents guide, I just want to say quickly what Voice of San Diego is. We are an online news organization that produces all manner of things, from daily news on our website to podcasts to this parent guide. And, one of our biggest missions is to hold public officials accountable. So I don't know if you read us. If you don't, you should. We put out a product every morning called the Morning Report, which I wish I had read in San Diego when I first moved here, because it just gives you the quick hits of what you really need to know for the day. And yeah, I guess let's open this presentation up, huh? Here we go.
Great.
Okay, things are working. We already introduced ourselves. This is our the beautiful cover of the guide. Laura, you want to say some words?
Yeah. First thing is that the guide is actually a paper magazine, and very old-fashioned of us, but we believe strongly and have heard from parents who've used it over the years that having it on paper really makes a difference for them. They like to flip the pages. They like to circle things and write in the margins. I know a few people who carry it around in their bag with them. So it's a physical thing for this virtual news organization, and that's for a reason. You may or may not have it in your hand right now during this presentation, but we invite you to go to that URL that's on the screen and check it out, download it, and go to your local library, because there are copies of the Parents Guide at, I think, every library in San Diego County. So you should be able to pick up your own physical copy there, or many preschools and other community center type places have copies of the school's guide as well.
And it looks like Meg, our producer, put a link to the guide in the chat also, if you want to click on that link and be able to see it. Yeah, the guide is everywhere, like Laura said. And, we made it because we want to give you all information that you can use. And that's not always what we do at Voice of San Diego. Like I said, we're a news organization that does a lot of investigative news, but this is really geared towards parents to help them have all the information they need in one place, right at their fingertips. And hopefully that can lead them to make more informed choices or to ask more informed questions, and to, hopefully create a more robust conversation about education in San Diego County. Laura?
Sure. So the guide, as you'll see, mainly consists of a bunch of tables of data about almost every single school in San Diego County, but we do pack it with other useful information, such as guidance about how to select a school. This year, we provided an overview of what the education options are looking like post-pandemic. And we also included a summary of private schools that might be available. This was published in the fall. That's why it's dated 2021. But we recognize that many of you are making choices for fall of 2022 right now. And so though we released it a few months ago, we wanted to reintroduce the guide for those of you who are making choices now.
Right. I was looking at some of the dates, Laura, for the school district choice. And, whoever's watching tonight, whatever school district you're from, we'll give you all the information we can. But I know we had specifically tried to reach out to some of the South County school districts, and National City, South Bay Union, San Ysidro, all of their choice window or choice application periods are like National City's just started and everybody else's is yet to come. So, even though we put it out in 2021, it is still super relevant. It's the most up-to-date information you could get for the choices you're making if your choice window opens now. Is there anything else on this page we should talk about?
Yeah, there is something else, which is maybe we should say just a little bit about generally how school choicing works, which is for those of you who are new to the school district thing. So I guess I'm mainly talking to the preschool parents right now, but school districts assign you to a default school based on most school districts assign you to a default school based on your address. So your child is if you do nothing, they'll be assigned to a school. You do need to register, and that's a formal process, but they'll select the school for you if you don't make an affirmative choice. If you decide that you want your child to attend a school other than their neighborhood school or their geographically assigned school, that's when you have to abide by the choice processes of each district, and they vary quite a lot about what those processes are and the likelihood of your being able to select a school outside your neighborhood school. But that's the general framework for how school choice works. In addition, there are charter schools. So charter schools are public schools that a family, they're public schools funded by the state, just like regular public schools are. They're just managed by a board of directors and then overseen usually by the local school district, sometimes by the county office of education or the state. And those have their own separate admissions and selection processes that if you decide you want your kid to attend a charter school, you have to abide by their processes as well.
That's right. Each one is different. And, so you'd have to reach out to those charter schools, find out when their application process is. I was just looking at Chula Vista Elementary School District. Their application window for choice has technically closed. I think it closed February 15th. But most of these districts will still let you submit an application after that. And if there is openings in a school that allows choice in that district, usually you can still get an application into it, and sometimes you still might be able to make that choice. Let's see. Yes, somebody just commented that San Diego Unified's choice window is already closed, and that's right. We did a couple of these workshops before their window closed. I think it closed in mid-October or mid-November. They do one of the earliest ones around.
They do, yeah. So we know that for San Diego Unified parents. Either you're really ahead of the game and you're thinking about fall of 2023, or you recognize that you missed the choice window, but you just want to understand how the whole system works, and maybe you'll use your choice ability in the future. But yeah, they ask parents to think about their choices basically a year ahead of when their kids will attend school, which most parents are not on the ball enough to do, but that's how they do their system.
Right. And I'll just say another plug. If you've just joined us, and you could comment, what part of the county you live in and how old your kids are, that will help us direct some of the information directly at you. So if you want to comment on that, that'd be great. But soon we'll get into the data of the guide, which is the last bullet point here. We provided you a lot of different data points that kind of try to get at school quality. Some of them you've heard before, like how chronic absenteeism. Other ones are completely new that we generated ourselves with the help from UCSD data scientists. So I won't get ahead of my skis. We'll get to that when we get to that.
Mm-hmm. You want me to start?
Sure.
All right. Okay, so the heart of the guide is a bunch of data tables. As we mentioned earlier, almost every single school in San Diego County is public school. Almost every single public school in San Diego County is listed in these data tables, and they're listed alphabetically by school district, and then within each school district section they're divided by level. So you'll see here the Alpine Union Elementary School District starts with its elementary schools. And the first block of data is really just about the basic information about the school. Is it a charter or isn't it? What grade levels does it serve? And as of, I believe it's last fall, how many students are in that school? So those are all really important parameters for thinking about a school. You just want to know what kind of school is it, what grade levels, and how many kids, big, little. And one nice thing is when you can look down these columns and see the variation. So it's really interesting to me, for example, looking at Alpine, the range of different grade levels that they're serving.
Right. And then once we go through that basic information, we get into test scores first, but we had to do something a little bit different with test scores this time because we were making this guide during the pandemic. Well, I was about to say things have settled down a little, but I'm not sure that's true. People are in school now anyway. But when we were making this guide, we didn't know whether we should even do it, what information we should include, whether people were going to be back in school. When we were talking about making this guide, school was still out. And so we knew we couldn't use test scores from the pandemic year because most schools didn't even take tests to begin with. And so what we did was average up the 3 previous years of test scores for ELA and math, because we thought that would give the most fair sense of how these schools do. And you can see there's the little bubbles and there's also the arrows. And the bubbles are like a 5-point scale. I think a full green ball means they scored in the highest group, and half a green ball means next to highest. There's a key with the guide that explains all this, and they're all pretty intuitive. And then the trend is just whether those scores are heading up or down. And
Over the prior 3 years of test score data, which ended in 2019, by the way.
Right. Is it over 3 years or over 1 year?
The trend. You're right. It might be a 1 year.
Over 1 year.
You're right.
Yes.
So that's 2018 to 2019.
Right. You got it. Do you want to say any more about test scores, Laura, or talk about the next metric?
I think on the next slide we have do we have a little more on the test scores? It's just more, you just get to see more data. Okay.
More samples. We can hang here.
All right. Yeah. This is a fine one. Yeah. Let's move on to the next. I guess no. Let's say a little bit more about test score data.
Please. Please,
Let's say
Laura is a great person to listen to on test score data.
so let's share our a perspective, point of view, that
Sure.
test scores are not the be all end all. They don't tell you everything you need to know about a school. They don't
You said it
tell
so many
you
times.
everything you need to know about the kids and families at the school, but their information, their information that's available, and we feel strongly that although it shouldn't be the single determinant of the quality of a school, it is information that parents deserve to have in their hands. And that's the driver of why we include the test score data in the guide.
Totally. Which leads us into the metric we created, which is the next one you'll see there, the income versus test score metric. A lot of times test score might tell you more. In fact, most researchers would say that a test score tells you more about the socioeconomic status of a school rather than the quality of its teachers. And so we created a metric that tries to control for socioeconomic status. And you'll see there that those numbers range from, I think, plus 200 to negative 200. And, if you think about test scores and the poverty level of a school, as poverty level goes up, test scores goes down at an almost 1-to-1 ratio. The curve is shocking. But there are schools that fall above that curve and schools that fall below it. And that's what we measured with this. Schools that scored 25 to negative 25 were basically on the average. 0 was dead average. But anything outside those margins, that's a school that's doing much better than expected or much worse than expected. And so, we think that is a really great metric to help shine a light on test scores. You might see one of these schools that looks like it has good test scores, but then it has a negative rating, and that might mean it's a really wealthy school, and really wealthy schools tend to have great test scores. That's just a fact. But in that case, that wealthy school actually has less good test scores than it should compared to other ones.
Yep.
Hop in there, Laura.
I think we covered the test score thing pretty well.
We sure did. Then we have some more data though. Do I need to skip slides to talk about it, or?
I can't remember no, I think we can wait. Yeah.
Yeah.
So go back because we can't see the column headers on this slide. Okay. So next, there's some important demographic data. The next two columns, starting with English learners, tells you the percent of students at the school who are designated as English language learners. One thing I would note about that is that the assessment of kids for English language learner status was very sparse last year. So it's not as accurate data as one might hope, but it still gives you a signal of what the student population is like in terms of their English language learner status. And then the next one is free and reduced price meals. So families who are having trouble affording lunch and breakfast can apply for either free lunch or reduced price lunch. And that's an indicator of overall level of income or poverty, the flip of that, at a school. And so it tells you that column, the free and reduced price meals, tells you the general income level or poverty level of the school.
Right.
It's just a flat number. It doesn't tell you the range or the diversity at the school. But again, these are pieces of information that we wanted to share with you.
Sure. And plug for Edison Elementary, which has, if you look at its free and reduced lunch population, it's like 99% of that families who live near the poverty line and qualify for that. But it had the third highest score in our income versus test score metric because it is just really doing so much better than we might expect it to be doing just based on numbers on a piece of paper. And I visited that school, and it's just a really wonderful place to be. I think that's the thing that the data doesn't get at, is the vibe of a place, and we may have that in more slides to talk about. more later. But Edison has two things going for it. It has that warm vibe, like this is a place where I really want to be. And if you go inside the classrooms, it also has really rigorous academic instruction happening. And those, are the two things that have to happen to close the achievement gap from the researchers I've talked to, warm and loving and like rigorous academic standards. And for a school to get both those things right is obviously really special.
That's in San Diego Unified, right?
Yes,
Edison?
that's
Yeah.
in San Diego Unified and City Heights.
Yeah.
Chronic absenteeism is the next one. Chronic absenteeism measures how many students were absent 10% or more of the days of school. And so a really high percentage of students being chronically absent, is not necessarily a great sign for that school. And like Laura was saying about test scores, they're really not the only thing that matter. But chronic absenteeism tells you maybe a little bit more about the environment of a school. Is this a place where kids want to be and are showing up really regularly? A lot of times higher poverty schools will be more likely to have higher chronic absenteeism, but a school with higher poverty that has really great low chronic absenteeism numbers, that would be like a really great indicator. And these are just like small indicators. Nothing is really a substitute for visiting the school, but they're all little arrows to point in a direction of what is the school quality like here.
Next, we have graduation rate. And one of the good news stories in education over the past couple of decades is that schools have done a really great job. High schools have done a really great job of improving the percentage of attendees who actually graduate from high school. Just a lot of focus on it, a lot of support for students, a lot of guidance for them, maybe raising expectations as well. Just helping students recognize that that's a bare minimum that they need to tuck into their belts for moving forward in life. So happily, the graduation rate numbers have been climbing steadily, and you'll see some good ones, but some variation if you look across the high schools in the schools guide.
And then we have average years teaching experience at the school. So that's if you took every teacher at the school and took an average of their years teaching experience. This is another one we created ourselves that we're really proud of. It's the second year we've provided this piece of information. It's not something the state provides. We have to take a big, massive database and get help from data scientists at UCSD Extension, the Center for Research and Evaluation, if I'm correct. And so they break that down for us. We've dug into that data before. We found that charter schools on the whole have much less experienced teachers. And that doesn't always have to be a bad thing. Sometimes newer teachers are really hungry and great. And so it's just a data point to take note of. Sometimes if the average years experience are really high, that might mean that's, just a really wonderful place to be. And so the teachers don't want to leave. But, just because it's lower, I dig a little deeper and see what it means in that case. Sometimes it might be reflective of the environment of the school. Sometimes it might not, I guess is what I would say. I don't know what you think, Laura.
I think that the healthiest situation is to have a range of experience in a school. You want some veterans and you want some new teachers that bring different energy and different backgrounds. So
the
that's
middle,
what I would look for, or that's what I have looked for in a school is a nice diversity, and then some mid careers that are really hitting their stride. It's good to have that combination.
We had another comment, this person saying that test scores could be a reflection of the principal, and that they had even heard of a principal who had cheated on test scores. Nicola put that. Nicola, my email address is will@vosd.org if you want to send me more information. Those are exactly the kind of stories we investigate at Voice of San Diego. You don't have to, but if you're interested, again, it's will@vosd.org.
I want to agree with that comment in another dimension, though,
Sure.
which is that Principals are absolutely key. And so as you're thinking about as you're making a choice for the school for your kids, um, I would I recommend paying a lot of attention to the principal and looking for a school where you feel like you've got a good leader at the head of the school. A good question that I often ask when I'm visiting a school is like what are you working on at the school? What are your plans? Where are you headed? And if
Mm,
the principal doesn't have a good answer to that question, if they're like, "Ah, we're just," I mean, right now in the pandemic, they might just say, "We're just surviving," and
right.
I'm okay with that. But outside of pandemic conditions, they ought to have a really inspiring answer to that. Like, we're really digging in on, for an elementary school, on our math curriculum. And we've been rolling out a new approach to math that we see is working better for kids. You know, something. It doesn't really matter so much what it is, but they ought to be on a journey and always trying to make the school better and to serve families better. So look for answers from your principal about that.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, Laura, because being a principal is obviously such a tough job, being crammed between the administration and getting, edicts from above and the teachers and trying to make sure the teachers and the families are happy. Another thing that I heard about principals is that, you want to see them out and about in the school. And a lot of principals will treat their office like it's a bunker, and that's like not really a good sign normally. Maybe that's not always true. Maybe sometimes they need to treat it that way, but that sounded right when I heard it. And the great schools I've been to, the principal is a visible force. And like you said, could give you a really inspiring answer to that question of like, where is it we're going?
Yeah, I think both of those things, those both of those look fors as they call it in education, they hold for elementary, middle, and high schools. You want a principal on a mission, and you want a principal who's out and about and not hanging out in their office too much. That's hard for a parent to tell, honestly, that last one.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Unless you're
yeah,
like volunteering but you could ask the teacher if you get a good relationship going with the teacher. I'm sure they'll spill the tea sometimes.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I know the number of people online is growing, and we thank y'all for that. And we would love to interact with you as much as possible here and answer your questions. So anything you want to ask, like please fire away. Um, do we need to linger on this slide?
Well, we have one more bit of data about the schools that we haven't talked about yet.
Oh gosh, the oversight. I'm ashamed. What is it?
It's the distinctions.
Oh, the distinctions. Great. Let's talk about the distinctions. How can we forget?
So after each school name, you see some bold information. And there are three special, we call them distinguishing features or distinctions that we were able to collect data on that we wanted you to know about. So, and this is a great slide for showing it. The first one, you can't tell from here, but I think it's a little globe because that indicates a school that is an international baccalaureate school. Am I right, Will? Yeah.
The globe.
International baccalaureate um, is is a curriculum and an approach to education that is headquartered actually in Switzerland. Has a very wide view, high rigor, and a lot of emphasis on character traits as well, especially at the elementary and middle school levels. It gets extremely rigorous and and challenging to be an international baccalaureate at the high school level. And usually it's an option for high schoolers to pursue the international baccalaureate certificate. So if you see a globe on a high school, it will be an option for students if they want to pursue the IB diploma. But for elementary and middle schools, it tends to be more universal that the whole school is part of the International Baccalaureate, and it's a great approach to education. So something to know about, and if you visit a school or learn about it and like it, then you can look for schools that are doing IB by looking for the globe in the guide.
Yes, I'm glad you talked about that one. And we also have two other designations. The well, so wait, I just looked this up. It says IB next to the school if it's an IB school.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay.
yes,
Apologize.
Yes, and the globe actually means something different. The globe means it's a dual language school, and then it tells you the language
There you
that
go.
that they're using at that school. And I mean, I'm embarrassed to say I couldn't say much more about a dual language school than they teach in two different languages there. Laura, do you want to add on to that and make it better?
Sure. Yeah, the purpose of a dual language school is that your kid will be dual language literate, both speaking and writing. And they approach it though in different ways. So if you go visit a dual language school, ask them what your child's experience will be in the grade level that your kid's heading into. Some of them do half the day in English, half the day in the target language. Some of them start 90% in the target language, and then they slide it back to 50-50 as you go along. But it's really the purpose is for everybody in the school to speak both languages by the end. One cool thing is that for kids who arrive at school speaking the target language, like if it's a Spanish language dual immersion school, some kids may come in speaking Spanish fluently and not be so fluent in English. And dual language schools are outstanding for those kids as well.
Right.
So it's a great opportunity for English only speakers to get another language under their belt. When you start early with languages, they tend to learn it better and more deeply. And it's also a great approach for kids who come in not speaking English fluently.
Do you speak another language, Laura?
Not now. I used to speak French really well, and I started in preschool.
Right, right. I
Yeah.
should have known. Yeah, yeah, yeah. My Spanish is embarrassingly not good. It is there, but it's terrible. And so I wish I had gotten a chance to go to a dual language school. The
That's good.
last thing we have is the two kids cutely holding hands there. That means there's a free after school program at the school. And that this list is not comprehensive. It's the best list we could get our hands on from the County Education Authority. And they gave us a list of the state funded free after school programs. The after school program could be full, even if there's a sign there, or the school may have a different kind of after school program, even if there's not a sign. So, there's legwork to be done here for parents, but we tried to give you the information that we could. How to use the guide?
Well, we had a whole bunch of slides that had to use the guide, but this is a good place to be now. So
Okay.
yeah, let's stick on this one. So in addition to looking at the data, flipping through your guide or scrolling through it in our online version, ideally you get out to the schools and you go visit them, talk to parents, and get their perceptions. Don't rely entirely on parent word of mouth, but add parent word of mouth to your set of information that you have about a school. And to help you out, we provide on the last page of the guide, we provide some questions that you might want to ask when you go visit a school or when you talk to a parent from a school to help you think of the things you might want to be asking about that maybe, especially if you have a kindergartner, you might not know what you're looking for, what would be important to ask about. So we give you a nice list to inspire your thinking and help you with those visits.
Did we include your question for principals, Laura, that what direction is the school headed or what are you working on right now? That's such a good one.
I don't think we did, but yeah,
That's
maybe for
terrible.
next year.
Really a good question that, yeah, I think you all should ask that.
But once we publish it in the guide, they'll all be ready with an answer. Let's keep it an insider question, please.
I hope they're all paying that much attention to the guide and that, and that
Sure,
we have to
sure.
create this shadow system of giving parents information. That would make me very happy. Um, well, so I thought Laura covered that pretty well. I guess this slide leads me to believe we're at the end of our presentation.
Yeah, but we'll take questions if people have more.
Absolutely.
Yeah, type them in. We'll hang out here for a while.
Yeah, yeah. I guess let's just hang out and see if people ask more questions. Right now, we don't have any questions. We did get somebody who was said that their child is in kindergarten. I like feel like I'm one of those like hosts on public radio who's like keeping the momentum going when they're like trying to ask for more money. I mean, thank God we're not doing that, but these are like a lot more fun in person when people can interact with you instead of you're like, let's keep the show going.
Yeah.
A kinder parent. What would you say about a kinder parent, Laura?
Oh, one thing we didn't talk about, Will, that we often get asked at these sessions is what the heck is transitional kindergarten?
Mm,
Yeah.
yes, TK. You gotta be born at the right time, or not
Well,
anymore.
maybe not anymore. But you have to be in the right district. So transitional kindergarten is an extra grade level that California added a while back now, a decade ago or so, as it moved the birth date entry to September 1st from December 1st. It let those kids who were born in the fall have an extra grade level. It was totally unfair. But now, starting next fall, if school districts are able to open enough classrooms of it, all kids who are 4 years old in the fall should have the option of sending their kid to transitional kindergarten in the public schools. So on the plus side, it's free. And
Is it half a day sometimes, or is it always full day?
almost all the way across San Diego County, it'll be full day, but that's something I wanted to mention, which parents know, which is full day for a school is not full day for a parent working. It's 9 to 3. So some things to think about if you are in a great childcare or preschool program before you jump on the transitional kindergarten bus. You should know that, first of all, it's not full day, and though they intend or hope to provide after school programming for the kids, the districts are having trouble getting that together for lots of reasons. So know about the hours. The other thing to know about is that the ratios of kids to students are going to be different than you have in your kindergarten. In your childcare or preschool setting, where you might have 9 or 10 kids to one in childcare preschool, and it can get up to like 20 or 24 to 1 in transitional kindergarten, though we're supposed to be heading towards 14 to 1 in transitional kindergarten over time. So if you're thinking about transitional kindergarten, think really hard about it. Think about your kid, what they're like as a 4-year-old, whether they will thrive in a more structured setting that transitional kindergarten is compared to what preschool or childcare might be in the community, and then make a smart choice.
We got a couple of questions here. The first one is suggestions for schools that strongly support education for kids with disabilities. There are quite a few schools out there that advertise that they specialize in this, right?
There are. My recommendation for that is to work with the special education department at the school district. So, starting when your child is 3 years old, they can be evaluated by the school district for special education needs. And if you have concerns about your child, think they might need extra services, and they're at least 3 years old, I would encourage you to reach out to the school district and get them involved in that evaluation, and then have a conversation with the school district about which schools would provide the best setting and supports for your child given their particular needs. If they're older than just entering school, maybe they're in school and not getting the level of services that or support that you think they need, you gotta be in conversation with the special education department, talk to them about options, and really insist that your
Yes,
child get the supports and services that they need. Um,
that's right.
and
The special education.
don't worry about being aggressive about it, because you're protected by law. They're required to give your child I don't know the exact language, but the supports they need to thrive. So
Right.
get them in the place that works for them.
And special education teachers and parents that I've talked to, it is absolutely one of those situations where the squeaky wheel gets the grease. Like The more proactive you are and the more you ask for those services, the more you're going to get them. And I mean, I feel sympathy for the districts that they're having like a hard time filling all the special education kids' needs. It's a difficult task, definitely. But I think it matters a lot in that case how proactive you are. And I know this is not a recommendation for a school, but I did talk to a principal recently at Innovations Academy in Kearney Mesa, and she told me her school specializes in helping non-traditional learners. I'm not vouching safe whether that's correct. In fact, that school didn't do so well on test scores, and that's one reason she called me. But she said one reason they don't do well in test scores is because they work so much with children with special education plans who are non-traditional learners.
It turns out to be pretty common among charter schools that kids who are not thriving in a more traditional public school setting the families start to explore their options and sometimes choose towards charter schools, some of which do a better job of customizing education to the individual child. On the other hand, they don't have as deep pockets or resources for supporting children with special needs. So you gotta navigate and think about, ask lots of smart questions and think about whether the charter school or the regular schools will be able
That's
to
right.
give your kid what they need.
That's right. Because like project-based learning is such a buzzword at this point, and I don't necessarily trust it when I hear it anymore, because everybody knows they're supposed to be saying it. So I think just because somebody's telling you they're going to customize their education, doesn't always mean that's going to be the case. I mean, I love to take people at their word, but I'm an investigative reporter, so you don't have the most trusting soul here to guide you when it comes to that. We had 3 questions from someone called Damra4, but I'm going to skip a couple of those because we answered one already and go to a question from Liz. The guide is fantastic. Do you know of any other resources like this that review private schools? Do you have any advice or suggestions for parents considering private versus public?
I don't know of a resource.
We provided a little information on them in this
Yeah.
guide for the first time ever. If you can get a physical copy or if you go to the online version, we surveyed private schools and we asked them if they were going to provide online education, and we asked them how many scholarships they give and maybe like 2 other questions. So it's very limited information, but there is that in the guide. And I don't know if you were going to add something else, Laura.
I mean, I would just say to bear in mind that just because it's private doesn't mean it's better than public school. So
Right.
don't assume that as you're doing your journey to learn more about the private schools and the public schools that you're considering. When it comes down to it, it really is about the relationship between your kid and the teacher in the classroom. So pay close attention to the teachers and the teacher quality and the overall feel of the school, but make sure that underneath, even if you've got a good feeling school, make sure, as Will was explaining earlier, that there's also a lot of academic rigor. And those are the kinds of questions and look fors that you should apply both to public and private school options. But unfortunately, I think the other thing I would say is that there's no right school. So,
Right.
it's also conditional on the teacher you get that year, on the cohort of kids that your child happens to be within the classroom. My son went to a great elementary school, but the cohort of kids he was in was wild. And so he didn't get the best from that school because the teachers were always like pulling their hair out because of what was going on in the classroom for that particular class. They were notorious. And they
Was
moved
he the one stirring the trouble up, Laura?
He was not part of the trouble, I swear. But anyway, it's all very conditional. So don't pressure yourself to think that there's one right school out there for your child if you can just possibly find it or afford it or pay for it. That's not the case. There are many places where your child will thrive. But on the other hand, if your kid's not thriving in school, then you should exercise your options and see if there's a place that that where they'll do better.
That's right.
So
I
that's
mean,
my
Tucker Carlson went to La Jolla Country Day, and look what happened there. So,
Hey,
hopefully,
Dahmer asked a good question, which is about hybrid and alternative and online schools.
let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, one great thing about COVID, there are a few good things about this pandemic, and one of them is that it forced schools and school districts to get better at hybrid and online learning. They've got better at the technology. The teachers practiced in the in the midst of an emergency how to work with kids online. And pre-pandemic, I would have advised you to really avoid online learning. But now, in the wake of the pandemic, I bet you could find. I know you can find some options that might work really well for your kids. So,
It would be
um,
so hard to quantify, but trying to think about how much better schools have gotten at it in the past 2 years, I mean, it must be immense, the changes that have happened in teachers' ability to be able to do that kind of teaching. I'm sure there were a few out there before, but I mean, it's got to be really vast how much that's changed.
they were forced, not just like the teachers' behavior and skills, but also just the technology platforms that support them. So it's a new world out there.
Right.
Um, there's nothing that can replace an in-person relationship. There's things that can happen when people are in the same space with one another that can't happen on these 2D flat screens. But certain kids, maybe because they are, headed towards the Winter Olympics, we had lots of San Diegans in the Winter Olympics, they couldn't do regular school, or because of their own personalities, or whatever it is. It's great that there are better online options. So we don't have a clear answer for you, Dhamra, about which ones are best, but we at least we can say to you that there are lots of options. So I would check. I wouldn't have said this before, but you need to look both in the charter realm and with the regular public school districts, because you should find options from both modes of public education.
Right. Right. Well, I don't think we have any more questions. Am I missing any?
I don't see any.
Um, well, thank you all for being with us. I guess we should shut it down here. Is there anything we forgot to talk about, Laura?
I can't think of anything. Just emphasize that the paper copy is pretty awesome. So go to your public library, and I think we put up um, a source for finding a list of places where the guide is. If you're having trouble finding it, reach out to Voice of San Diego. They can help you get your hands on one.
Right. We did just get another question. Somebody loved the guide. We'd love to hear that. Thank you so much, Arpita. And they also asked about stats about bullying or disciplinary actions against bad or misbehaving teachers. I mean, I was thinking suspension rates for kids, and we toyed with putting that in the guide. We may put it in next year's guide. But in terms of information about misbehaving teachers, that's something we worked on a lot with our investigative reporting unit at Voice of San Diego. But that information has been incredibly difficult to get. We've had to file Public Records Act requests with the school districts. In some cases, we had to sue to make sure we get that information. But we have done quite a bit of reporting on that, which I urge you to check out. If you Google teacher misconduct and Voice of San Diego, you'll find it. But you put what's a good place to start to get information like that. I mean, you really have to do a public records request. I mean, you could ask around the school, but I'm not sure if you'll make any friends by asking around those questions. And the public records requests can take months to get back. I don't know if you have any other thoughts about it, Laura.
I agree with RP. I really appreciate the work Voice of San Diego did on it. It made me really mad. And I'm glad you daylighted a lot of it. In terms of the disciplinary data, we debated it and we excluded it from the guide and we'll explain our reasoning, which is that data is really easy to manipulate. And it's not cheating exactly, but if the metric is suspensions, then schools can do in school, detentions instead of suspensions, and avoid actually toggling up their suspensions. Um, so we're not really sure what it tells you. It could tell you something good. One school that has low disciplinary rates, it might tell you that there's a lot of good behavior in that school. Another school with good disciplinary rates might be, it might be chaos, but they're avoiding the suspensions or other behaviors that get them bad data on that. There's a lot of accountability for principals and motivations for them to keep those numbers low. So, yeah.
The restorative justice stuff, I mean, what we've heard is that it takes a lot of resources to make it work. I think it's a great theory about discipline, certainly, that instead of pushing someone out of school, which is probably not a great idea, we sit in a circle and we talk about it, who was harmed and restitution and all that. But that takes resources that schools don't always have, even though it's another one of those buzzwords that you hear in education all the time. Everybody's customizing kids' education. Everybody's doing restorative justice.
Oh, come on. Hide your cynicism.
I can't do it. I'm sorry. I apologize, everybody. There's some great schools out there. I talked about Edison earlier. It's a place. It makes me happy. That's my happy place, thinking about the good schools I know. They're there. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. And I'll just say my contact info again, and that is will@vosd.org. If you have questions about the Parents Guide, or if you have a tip about something good or bad that's going on in schools, hit me up with all that, will@vosd.org. I won't make Laura give you her email unless she wants to.
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Laura Cohn Laura, LauraKohnLaura, and you can hit me with a DM if you want, or ask
You
a
got
question.
those DMs open, huh?
Yeah, DMs are
That's
open.
right. That's right. That's when it's not like that on Twitter, I can't trust that person. All right. Well, we're going to sign off. Thanks for being here, everybody.
Thanks, parents.